Today we have a question from a black belt coach who's having trouble with one of his friends who's also a fellow black belt. So here's what's happening. Basically, our friend Bob, because we will keep all the details anonymous, says that his buddy from another gym is coming to train with him. He's happy about it. He loves having another black belt on the mat during his class that he teaches at his gym. And he says that the only problem is that his buddy shows up 45 minutes late every single time. And he says that he assumes or interprets this to be sort of they don't want to do warm-ups or anything, and so they just show up whenever they want to. But at his gym, Bob's gym, they're pretty strict on time. The way that his coach did things is if you were 15 minutes late, that's considered unacceptable. And so his question to me is, one, if I've ever had issues with someone who's just chronically late, coming to class and maybe he's trying to skip warm-ups, and if so, how I dealt with it. So, Bob, thank you for the question, brother, and we'll talk about that. But I'll tell you maybe sort of how I would talk to your black belt friends second. What I want you to think about this, because we're talking coach to coach, right? Talking shop. One of the things that you can do with your warm-ups is make them so people don't want to miss them, right? If it's this thing in jiu-jitsu, right, where people skip warm-ups. We always make jokes and memes about purple belts not showing up to the warm-ups or higher belts not showing up to the warm-ups. Why is that? I mean, because most warm-ups suck. Unless you really put some thought into them, most people, they do, or a lot of warm-ups you see in jiu-jitsu are like calisthenics, some stretching that's not going to make any discernible difference to your flexibility or mobility because you're not holding the stretches long enough. And I mean, you do these different calisthenics and then we finally jump into our technique and everything else. I used to do the same thing. I used to really used to wear people out with the warm-ups, and then we would do technique and then rolling. And then it kind of, to me, the flow is not good because then you're getting people ramped up and then we're coming down, getting our heart rate back down and then back up again with rolling. I don't like that flow. I like it to be more of a continuously ramping up to the top and rolling, and then we bring it back down. But also, to think about this. Your students are coming in there, and I don't know what your warm-ups are like. I'm just sharing this. It's a thought to chew on, maybe for another coach as well. But think about it this way too. Let's say someone comes in there for our 90-minute class. They have the holder of this knowledge, the holder of these details and intricacies of the techniques that could immediately make a difference in their game, that could help them win a jiu-jitsu championship, that could help them defend themselves in a street fight. And instead of doing all that, we're doing jumping jacks, right? Like, it's a waste of time. We would be better served, for our students, we would better serve them if we then take that time and say, let's say it's 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever you're going to spend on your warm-ups, and say, let's do more reps of our technique. Or let's take out fragments of the technique and then turn that into a drill that then lends itself to being better, or lends itself to supporting us when we then do the actual technique. A great example of this, if I have some white belts and we're going to do a full guard Kimura series, I'll start them by doing Kimura sit-ups where you basically go over top, you're sitting back and forth side to side with the elbow, right? And then we will progress that to basically the hand here and do a hip heist. And then when we do that, then later on we go to the technique. They already know how to do these big gross motor movements. And then we can focus on all those little details that they need to know about how to set up the Kimura and how to pull it away from the body and how to finish it, as an example, right? And those warm-ups, don't bore people, because they know they're getting technical value. And I think this is the rub, right? This is why a lot of higher belts don't like doing warm-ups, because a lot of times if the warm-ups are not structured carefully, they just end up being kind of boring and they're not very useful to them, and inherently they know this. But if you make those warm-ups, if you either forego it and just get right into technique, or if you make the warm-ups very applicable to the technique, people don't skip them because they know they're getting value from it. At least that's been my experience. Now, to your main part that you were really curious about, sort of to end that real quick, make sure you're really being focused on having good warm-ups that could make their skills better and not just going through some stretches and calisthenics because it's what you've always done. Okay. Now, the actual part that you were curious about is how to deal with the situation with your friend. It's very simple. You, one, have to be incredibly careful that you don't become overly sensitive about something that you deem as disrespectful, because that may not be their intention at all. You don't know what's going on with the situation because, like you said in your message, you haven't asked them yet. You don't want to be confrontational about the situation. But you need to ask them. You need to say what's going on, because you don't know. Your buddy could be showing up on the exact fastest moment that he possibly could. He could be getting out of work, rushing through traffic, and he gets to your class at the exact moment that he possibly can, which is 45 minutes late. That's the best he could do. And if that's the case, you should see that as more of a, man, I'm glad you made it. Man, you busted your butt to get here. I'm glad you made it. And that's the situation I have a lot of my students that have, because I have students from like literally an hour away in the surrounding areas, and they fight through traffic and everything else through 5 o'clock rush hour traffic to get to my gym. And when they're a few minutes late, I'm like, whatever, man, come on, let's get you on the mat. And in some cases, I have students like my buddy, Black Belt Adam, Adam from the videos. And sometimes he shows up late. In particular, he shows up late to a morning class every now and then because it's on his lunch break from work. I don't care. I know he's pressed for time. He already gave me a heads up about it. Let's get you on the mat. Now, the other side to it is he could be just skipping warm-ups, right? And at that point, you have to draw a boundary. I've talked about this numerous times on the channel. And an easy way to do it is simply just ask him a question. You make no accusations, you make no demands, and you don't go into it with any neediness. You just say, you know what, man? It's a bad look for the gym. We're really strict on time. We don't let anybody else just show up 45 minutes late. And to me, you're a black belt, and I want that to represent something in this gym. And so if you could, man, could you show up on time for me? Like, could you make it on time and not skip warm-ups? Is that possible? Can you do that? In any way you want to word that, right? But you're just asking a question. And then you leave it to him. The ball is in his court. If he says, no, I'm not going to do that, goodbye. It's no big deal. Probably not my friend anyway if you can't do that. Because again, it's your gym, his rules, or your rules, not his. If you went to his gym, it'd be his rules. But more than likely, he'll be like, oh yeah, sure, man, I can do that for you. Glad you said something. I didn't know it bothered you. It's probably something like that. Now, I have had a situation where I had a student of mine, this is years ago, who was a blue belt, and he was making it on time to all my classes, but he was late to everybody else's classes. I didn't know because he was on time to mine. Eventually, I approached him to it when I found out, and he told me that he didn't go to other people's warm-ups and their class technique stuff. He just showed up to rolling there because I was the only coach in the gym that could show him anything, and everybody else sucked, right? But basically what he told me. So that, along with some other stuff, see ya, right? When you draw a boundary, no big deal. It's just the way it is sometimes. And so again, to wrap this video up for you, Bob, number one, make sure you got good warm-ups. Put some thought into them. And if you don't have a good warm-up, just forego them and get right into the technique and really give your students, again, what's going to help your students out more? 20 minutes of like calisthenics and stretching, or 20 minutes of more rep time and more like situational drilling, right? Probably, to me at least, that's where the magic's going to be for your class, right? Your students. And that's who you're there to benefit. And then again, if the warm-ups are good, then just draw the boundary with your friend if they are in fact unable to make it on time and they're not rushing to get there to you, right? So again, that's my idea with it. Hopefully that helps you, Bob, and I'll talk to you guys next time.